All right, hey VC, I'm Jamie. Welcome back. We're back with another video. I'm back with vinyl added to the collection. So I've got a big stack of records for you to take a look at. And again, I always do appreciate all the comments. And you know, I won't spend a lot of time on each record because I got quite a listing here for you. But if there's something that strikes your interest, and if you know some trivia behind it, or you remember that album, please do post in the comments. I really enjoy reading them, and I'm sure everyone else does too. Okay, I posted this on my Instagram page. I just picked this up. Circus Maximus. This is a psych rock on Vanguard Records. I was familiar with the band, but really hadn't heard their stuff, and really enjoyed this record and picked this up pretty cheap. I don't think the seller who sold me this record knew what a gem they had, but happy to pick that one up for sure. That was one of those wow moments. Okay, we got some jazzy kind of stuff with LA Express. Maybe not my favorite band, but this is the album Shadow Play, and very wild cover, and Joni Mitchell did the cover. Also has worked with LA Express, and she does some kind of she appears on this album kind of like vocalization kind of stuff because it's predominantly instrumental, but LA Express. A couple of Dan Fogelberg records, early Dan Fogelberg. This is an album called Netherlands. Not bad, quite orchestral in spots. Early Dan Fogelberg. It wasn't recorded in Holland. It was called Netherlands, kind of off one of the studios that is located in Nederland, Colorado, I believe. So there's Dan Fogelberg there, and then the duet album with Dan Fogelberg and Tim Weisberg, and this is Twin Sons of Different Mothers. And then they would reunite years later and have a similar pose on their cover. Okay, this is a reissue on Pickwick. Pickwick, not necessarily my favorite label, but came across this one. Billy Preston, Organ Transplant, arranged by Sly Stone. So this is early Billy Preston. A lot of covers on here, like Satisfaction, Hard Day's Night, I Got You. The downside of often with Pickwick releases I found is that they leave some songs off. I don't know if that's the whole budget re-release, where they don't have as many songs on the reissue, but that is this case. But overall, though, happy to get that one. Fantastic jazz, of course, with Miles Davis, Seven Steps to Heaven. This is a stereo copy, and you know, Miles Davis, so many great phases, but this one with Herbie Hancock and Ron Carter. Really happy to come across this one on vinyl. Okay, this is a UK band called If. They had kind of a Blood, Sweat and Tears sound, and this is their album Waterfall. It's got kind of a die-cut cover, interesting cover there. And this is kind of a reconfiguration of their fourth album, and I think the story goes that their fourth album didn't get picked up in North America, so then when it did finally get released, it was called Waterfall, with some different tracks and that sort of thing. So they're a band worth checking out, If. Okay, the first performer at Woodstock 1969 was Mr. Richie Havens, and so many great folk albums. Something Else Again does a cover of Maggie's Farm on this one, and this on Verve Forecast. But reading the musician credits, did not know that Skip Prokop is featured on drums on this album. Skip Prokop from the band Lighthouse, Canadian, and yeah, I mean, he's been a session guy too. He's appeared on a number of albums, but yeah, Skip Prokop appearing on this album. Very cool. Okay, the band Sea Train, and this is Marblehead Messenger, and they were born sort of an offshoot of Blues Project, as I recall, and this is, again, an album produced by George Martin, and I think this was the band that George Martin produced following the breakup of the Beatles, hooked up with Sea Train, produced a couple of albums, this being one of them, on Capitol. Okay, here's some obscure stuff. A band called Anthem. There you go. There's not too much other information other than they're a trio, kind of a variety of music. It's pop, it's psych, it's that kind of stuff. Produced by Stan Vincent. Interesting, they think Neil Bogart, who was the head of Casablanca Records. This was kind of a blind buy. Just thought, well, I'll pick this one up. And enjoyed it overall. I don't think they had too many other records. Trio. There, but this is on Quality Records in Canada. Now, I think the original release had color on both sides, sometimes either with budget Canadian issues or reissues later. Sometimes they'll save money by choosing a black and white back cover, so I think that's the case there. Gary Wright, formerly of Spooky Tooth. We've got Gary Wright and the album The Right Place. Now, this is Gary Wright definitely heading into the 80s with this sound. An okay album, but not stellar by any stretch. Okay, here's another artist I was not familiar with. This is kind of another blind buy. This is the artist Neil Merriweather, bass player and bass player singer. And this is the album Space Rangers. And he does a cover of 8 Miles High on this one. And he's got a number of albums. He's got a pretty extensive catalog. So I'll have to check out more of his stuff. It's kind of heavy stuff. But yeah, there you go. Okay, I picked up Bob Dylan's Empire Burlesque. I enjoyed this album more than I thought I would, with Bob kind of getting into the 80s and featuring members of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers featured on that one. I did enjoy that album more than I thought I would. And, of course, picked up Bob Dylan's first album, Bob Dylan. And this has to be a later issue because this is in quite good condition. It just doesn't feel like it's a first copy by any stretch. But this is the album that started it all, Bob Dylan, with a number of folk covers on this one. Okay, we've got the proggy band Triumphirat. Here they're called the New Triumphirat, and this is the album Pompeii. I think there were some issues with their name at the time, hence the New Triumphirat, and then I think they went back to the original name, but great proggy sounds with that band. Some jazz, Cannonball Adderley. This is the Spontaneous Combustion Savoy Sessions. I love that title. And this is a double album. Absolutely enjoyed that one. Okay, and Ian and Sylvia's first album. I see a number of Ian Sylvia albums, but I never seem to come across this one. And this on Vanguard, and again, an album that started it all with a really nice write-up on the back. Like sometimes the write-ups can tend to be a little flowery, you don't really say anything, but this really gives you good background on both Ian and Sylvia, or Sylvia Fricker, as she was known. From Chatham, Ontario, Sylvia Fricker, there you go. Okay, another Canadian artist. Really happy to pick this one up. I rarely see this one. This is Keith Hampshire and the first cut. Keith Hampshire very much had a vocal style very similar, I think, to a David Clayton Thomas. Did a cover of First Cut is the Deepest, which is featured on here. And that was a big radio hit in Canada. Also, the song Daytime, Nighttime, which you heard all the time on Canadian radio. So yeah, Keith Hampshire, First Cut is the Deepest. Happy to come across that one. Okay, another variant on the Led Zeppelin In Through the Outdoor. This obviously doesn't have the brown paper bag, but I don't have this variant in terms of all the different angles on the cover, that sort of thing. So happy to pick that one up. Led Zeppelin's last studio album. Here was another kind of a blind buy, Canadian band called Rain. So this is called the Rain album. Not too much is known about this band, other than, if I'm not mistaken, the first track, Out of My Mind, for whatever reason, was a fairly, a regional Canadian hit, but then really got adopted as a Northern Soul hit in terms of that UK movement, Northern Soul, where they're playing soul records / Motown records, that sort of thing. For whatever reason, latched onto this particular song, and this version by the band Rain, Out of My Mind, became a big hit. So that's just interesting that way. And this came out in I want to say the 70s. And yeah, there you go. And this also features, I should mention, lead vocals by Phyllis Brown, who later became known as Charity Brown. So that's kind of neat. Oh, okay. Stephen Stills, another solo album. This is Stephen Stills and Thoroughfare Gap. Overall, not a bad record. I do really like the title track. It's a really nice acoustic. And again, with Stephen Stills, his acoustic guitar playing is just terrific. Odd cover of Not Fade Away. But other than that, not a bad record. Okay, we've got a Kate Bush album I was able to find, and which are getting harder and harder to find in the wild. Kate Bush and Never Forever, with the absolutely wild cover, and then there's Kate flying around there in the back, and this contains the hit Babushka, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Certainly remember the video on that. Okay, we've got more Canadian stuff. How about Ian Thomas? Ian Thomas, a great singer-songwriter. A lot of his songs were recorded by other, like Santana recorded one of his tracks, Chicago's recorded one of his tracks, and Ian Thomas is the album Levity. A couple of Canadian radio hits included the title track, also Back to Square One. Okay, Ian Thomas there. And we've got Loggins and Messina. Was not familiar with this one. Loggins and Messina Finale. So this is a double live album, kind of wrapping things up with the duo. Recorded between 75 and 76. This is a little bit of a mellower kind of send-off, if you will. So it doesn't have, you know, Your Mama Can't Dance and all that kind of stuff on it. A little bit more acoustic, mellow. Not completely, but yeah, a little bit more laid back kind of thing. Okay, we've got the band Focus, and this is Ships of Memories. I'm going to have to play this one a couple of times. Predominantly instrumental. I don't know, I didn't really connect with this. Focus had the hit Focus, and then the song Hocus Pocus. Did not know that this band was produced by Mike Vernon, who would produce Fleetwood Mac and a number of the great blues artists, but also worked with the band Focus. So there you go. Very cool. All right, and boy, I picked this one up. This was what, again, sort of a blind by Esther Phillips. This is the album Performance, and what a performance on this one. This is gritty blues R&B. Absolutely love this record. Really, really terrific. This one on, looks like the Kudu label there, and I want to say this came out in the 70s, but I'm not seeing a copyright date on it, but yeah, I want to say it came out in the 70s through CTI as well, but really terrific. Wow, that was a great record. Okay, we've got Brian Auger's Oblivion Express. I'm really getting into any Brian Auger I can find, that really wild jazz fusion rock kind of thing. And I don't know who GFG is, but they certainly labeled their record back in the day, but happy to get that. And speaking of Brian Auger, I picked up this one. This is Brian Auger and Julie Tippett, of course, formerly Julie Driscoll, and this is kind of a later, almost kind of a reunion album, the album Encore. Their stuff together was a little bit more in the folky vein. I did not know until recently came across that they appeared on the Monkees TV special from 1969, and they were featured quite prominently in the special with some weird stuff going on, but there you go. Okay, I picked up, this is later, Cat Stevens. Was not familiar with this. A good friend of mine, Bill, was familiar with this record, but this is Cat Stevens' Numbers, and this, I believe, was sort of like a concept album. I found this one okay. Didn't really connect with this. It's got a nice die-cut cover here, but I thought it was just okay. This was just a complete blind buy. Didn't know anything about this one. Just looked interesting. Song for the Old World, Anthony Davis Quartet. Overall, I enjoyed it. It was a really kind of an interesting ride. But I do not know very much about that particular artist at all. Okay, we certainly know this artist. This is the artist Melanie, and this is Stone Ground Words. And this is was apparently originally supposed to be a double album, but then the record company decided it should be a single album. I think it has since been reissued as a double album. Overall, not too bad. No big hits on this or anything, but I shall show you. This has got quite a nice kind of concept to it. So it opens up like this. And then it's got certainly the record inside, of course, and then it's got some other little goodies in here. Kind of a nice presentation. Of course, we got the sleeve here, and then we got this big sort of almost pull-out poster, and then it's got behind here, it's got all the song listings here. As I say, a good album, maybe not a stellar album. She was really kind of trying to get away from that brand new key sound with this album, but it includes this almost, and it's got like a little hole punch, so the idea that you would be hanging this up, and so I got one in each one. No, I guess you would sort of hang it up, but it's quite long. Like, it's nice pictures and everything like that, but that's quite, that'd be quite the thing to hang up on the wall there. Like, that's a full-size one there. There you have it. So, Melanie. Okay, we've got Sean Phillips and the album Furthermore. I'm not sure what I think of Sean Phillips. You can usually get his albums pretty cheaply. You know, amazing guitarist, maybe a little bit more laid back for my taste, but then not completely laid back. He does, you know, it gets jazzy sometimes, and he can kind of turn it up a bit. But it's an artist. Again, it's been said it's an artist you can't pigeonhole, and I think that's fair. But yeah, Sean Phillips and the album Furthermore. on the A&M Records. As I say, I'm not sure what I think of Sean Phillips. Picked this up at my local thrift store. This is, again, living stereo, so that piqued my interest. And this was Infinity in Sound, Esquivel and his orchestra, and very cool stamp here on the back. A special issue for new owners of RCA Victor stereo orthophonic high-fidelity phonographs, not for regular sale. That was pretty cool. Overall, not bad. You know, an interesting listen. Okay, I picked up Van Morrison's classic live album. This is so good. 2-record set, recorded live in concert, LA and London, summer of 1973. Recorded at partly at the Troubadour. I mean, what can you say about this fantastic double live album? Van Morrison, top form right there for sure. Okay, we've got a couple of albums from, increasingly is one of my favorite Canadian bands, The Box. So we've got The Box here, self-titled, and then we've got The Box with Pleasure and Pain. I don't know why, they had a good 80s sound, but it was an 80s pop, but it was a little bit more than that. They're not like Ultravox, but almost a little bit more, you know, a little bit more depth, that sort of thing. Must I Always Remember was a big hit on this one. This one had hits like Inside My Heart, Temptation, and Carry On. Band out of Quebec. Yeah, I just really enjoyed this band. Did not know that Sash Jordan was actually with this band, albeit briefly. And Sash Jordan would have a nice solo career as well. There you go. Okay, probably we'll have to open up this one. This is part of the this is part of the Little Feat reissues, and of course this is the classic album Dixie Feet, and this has been reissued as a 3 LP set, and there's the hype sticker there. Again, triple vinyl set. The 1973 classic album recut from the original mastered tapes, rare and previously unreleased demos and outtakes, and previously unreleased complete live show recorded in 1973. Lacquers cut by Bernie Grundman. Includes Dixie Chicken, 2 Trains, and Fat Man in the Bathtub. These reissues so far have been absolutely terrific from Rhino, so hopefully more to come. But again, because these are so nicely put together, I will take the shrink off this one and show you. With some of these double albums or triple albums, I've been trying to maybe keep the shrink and open it that way. I don't know if I'm having great success with that or not, because it's a little cumbersome to take the shrink off and then put the shrink back on, as opposed to a single album where you just kind of have it there. But kind of experimenting with that, if you will. Okay, we've got more stuff to show. Folky artist that wasn't familiar with, but I think I'll seek out maybe more of his stuff. Ralph McTell and Your Well-Meaning Brought Me Here. You Well-Meaning Brought Me Here. There you go. And this is produced by Elton John, the producer Gus Judgeon, and of course from the UK. But he's got a number of albums out, a bit very folky. Gosh, you forget how great early Steve Miller is. Steve Miller Band Anthology, this on Capitol, so this focuses on, you know, Boz Scaggs' days with the band and the early Steve Miller Band, but absolutely terrific. And this is a nice anthology because it's a double album set, but it's got a really nice sort of booklet inside. Hopefully we... just with some nice pictures, and that's just completely attached to the inside here. But yeah, quite nice. But yeah, I really forget how good early Steve Miller Band stuff is. Okay, we got Frank Zappa album. I don't come across too many Frank Zappa albums in the wild. This is Frank Zappa Meets the Mothers of Invention, European version. And featured in the band, Johnny Guitar Watson's on here. We've got Ike Willis, Steve Vai is also featured on here as well. So happy to add that one to the collection. And then we've got I've got a bit of a backstory with this one. This is Johnny Rivers, recorded live and then some, and I Know You Wanna Dance. And this features the great track Secret Agent Man. What's interesting, I had picked this album up previously, but it had the wrong album inside. And because these albums at this time of Johnny Rivers' career, all these sort of live with the Whiskey A Go-Go's, they all do sort of have that sound kind of the same. I hadn't realized initially, it's like, wait, I don't think this is the same, because these track listings aren't matching. So yeah, finally picked up a copy that has the correct album inside. So that's the track listing there. Johnny Rivers, rockin' and rollin', made so many records through the 60s at that time. Okay, and a little bit more jazz. How about Dexter Gordon, the Sophisticated Giant? And this is a promo copy, as you can see. I rarely come across this sort of style of promo copies. This is a lot more prominent in the States, and this, I believe, is an American issue. Yeah, it's got that, it's got the gold stamp on the back, but yeah, Dexter Gordon, can't go wrong. Great lineup on that album. Okay, we've got The Best of Eric Burdon and the Animals, Volume 2. And on MGM, very interesting cover there. And they certainly put most of the hits on Volume 1, but there you go, that's what's on Volume 2. Okay, we've got, now this is an album I didn't know existed. This is Ronnie Wood and Ronnie Lane. Ron Wood, of course, go on to the Stones, and then Ronnie Lane from the Faces, of course, Small Faces and the Faces, and then, of course, Ron Wood and Ronnie Lane would play together in the Faces. But they put this soundtrack that's got kind of a bluesy, rocky kind of soundtrack to a film called Mahoney's Last Stand. And I believe it's actually a Canadian film, but they do the soundtrack, and it's produced by Glyn Johns, of course, who would work with the Beatles and the Eagles. But a nice album, predominantly a lot of instrumentals on here, but did enjoy that. And I think this has been also issued with a different cover sort of thing, and maybe even a different title. But yeah, there you go. Okay. Okay, Leonard Cohen album. All right, this is New Skin for the Old Ceremony that features Chelsea Hotel No. 2, an amazing track. Overall, great Leonard Cohen album. Unfortunately for this particular copy, the first track is really scratchy, which I didn't notice when I was looking at the album. And so the first track is really, it's almost unplayable just with the scratching on it. But the rest of the album is fine. But that was a slight disappointment with that. But there you go. And I don't ever see that one. Okay, yes, I did manage to pick up. This one came in late. My local record store, Diamond Dogs, had this, and so I picked up Rolling Stones Live at Racket, New York City. This was tops on my list for pickup. This was from Record Store Day. It came in pretty late. Limited edition, white vinyl, recorded live at the Racket. I love Sweet Sounds of Heaven featuring Lady Gaga. I just love the live rendition of this. And is so happy that this came in, because I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to pick it up. I do think it's very nice for some of these Rolling Stone issues that they'll have, you know, the inner sleeve like this, and some nice photos there. And the Racket's sort of a smaller club to launch the new album, but they'll have that, and then they'll also have simply included a poly-lined inner sleeve. I think that's quite nice. And there you go. There's the vinyl on that one. Okay, just a few more records. Here's Devo, and this is the album. Sorry, it says it right on the right on the cover. Duty Now for the Future, Devo. And speaking of which, they do a cover of Secret Agent Man on this one. There's a great Devo. Okay, we've got Average White Band, and this is Put It Where You Want It. And I found the cover a little odd because it says Average White Band, Put It Where You Want It, and then First. And what's that all about? So this basically is a reissue of their first album with a different cover, that sort of thing. So that's why they put First here. And so there's the back here, but of course, Average White Band. Predominantly, again, great instrumental band, great sound for this band. Robbie McIntosh on drums, and Hamish Stewart, who would later go on to work with Paul McCartney, featured in this band. Okay, how about Toto and the Seventh One? Happy to pick up any Toto on vinyl, and this one features the track Pamela and Toto. These, again, amazing musicians. Sometimes a band that early got dismissed, but boy, the musicians with this band, fantastic. Toto and Seventh One. Okay, what else have we got here? The Butterfield Blues Band, Paul Butterfield Blues Band, and this is Sometimes I Just Feel Like Smiling. Great cover there. Produced by Paul Rothschild, of course. And we've also got some Electric Light Orchestra. I didn't have this one until now. Electric Light Orchestra and a New World Record. A pretty common one for ELO, featuring the track Telephone Line was a big hit, Livin' Thing. And also the song Do You, which was originally done by The Move, but with Jeff Lynne and ELO, they did a version. That's when I was first introduced to that song, was through this record, through ELO back in the 70s. Okay, Ramsey Lewis Trio. I do love the Ramsey Lewis Trio. I just think they just got a great sound. This is on Argo, the In Crowd. Now, this is a live album. This is recorded live at the Bohemian Caverns, Washington, D.C. And thank you, Willis, for whoever owned this previously, but a generally well-recorded live album. And I do love live albums from this time. I know like the recordings aren't necessarily all that great, but they do take you, especially when they're these kind of small clubs and things, they kind of take you back to a certain time that's kind of forgotten. Okay, now here's a duo I don't know a lot about, but really enjoyed this album. This is Vigras and Osborne of the album Cues, and if I'm not mistaken, this is produced by Gus Dudgeon, who of course is Elton John's producer, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, Jeff Wayne was involved with this. Of course, Jeff Wayne with the whole War of the Worlds thing was very much involved with this band. Chris Spedding's on guitars. Caleb Quay, who worked with Elton John, is on guitars in this one. Who is producing this one? It must be not Gus Dudgeon, but it must be Jeff Wayne producing this one. Yes, sorry, this is produced by Jeff Wayne with War of the Worlds, but I knew there was some some Elton John connection. But this is on the heaviest stock cardboard I have ever come across for a record. But check this out, really nice harmonies, almost has a Crosby, Stills, Nash kind of sound, but not quite. But yeah, really enjoyed this one. And again, that was kind of a blind buy, didn't really know anything, but just was getting kind of a vibe off it, sort of thing. Again, picked this reggae album up, didn't know anything about it. It's called Naughty Vision. Naughty Vision is an anthology of Rastafarian roots music recorded in Kingston, Jamaica between 1968 and 1978, featuring Burning Spear. You've also got Gregory Isaacs on here. Wailing Souls, Bunny Whalers featured on this one. It's fairly down. It's a pretty it's a little bit more sort of, I think, politically bent with this one, but it's a little bit more of a somber kind of record. But I thought, well, I'll take it. Band I knew nothing about. This is Mother's Finest, or MF, and a very rockin', funky band. This is called Another Mother Further. Better be careful how I say that. And they do a cover of Mickey's Monkey on this one. And wow, what an amazing band. I'm gonna, if I ever come across more records from this band, I'll have to seek them out. Joyce Baby Jean Kennedy is on lead vocals on this one, and they rock pretty hard on this one. Very, very good. Okay, and Adrian Belew, did not have this one until now. Adrian Belew and Twang Bar King. Of course, so nice to see that Adrian Belew is kind of doing a sort of King Crimson thing once again with Tony Levin, and so I think that's going to be terrific. And But yeah, great solo stuff from Adrian Belew, of course, who also worked with Talking Heads and did a little bit of a Talking Heads kind of thing recently too. So there you go. Okay, here we go. Pop at its finest, Chicago 16. And this one, of course, on Warner Brothers. And this is, of course, Chicago, firmly entrenched in the whole pop world. What were the ones on here? You got Hard to Say I'm Sorry, Getaway, and this is really David Foster taking this band in a certainly new direction. And speaking of which, the song Chains that's featured on this album is an Ian Thomas song, so in terms of covers. So there you go. Okay. Ian Anderson didn't have this one. This one's still in the Shrinka. In fact, Ian Anderson Animation. Overall, not a bad record. In fact, Jack Bruce featured on this one. Released a special with help from Jack Bruce, it says. But yeah, it's kind of, sorry for the glare on this one, kind of hard to see with the shrink on this one. But yeah, John Anderson, of course, formerly of Yes. And I think John Anderson's going to be back out doing some Yes tunes as well, sort of on his own kind of thing. This one I picked up at my local record shop. It was kind of in the absolute discount bin, and he kind of threw this one in. Sonny Chris, and I didn't know too much about this one on Crown Records, but a nice record. This features Gerald Wiggins, Errol Garner, and Stan Getz. But, enjoyable record in terms of the whole jazz world. I don't know if it's a big one, but I enjoyed listening to it. Okay, we've got some soft rock favorites, England Dan and John Ford Coley. And, of course, England Dan, who would later be Dan Seals. But we've got Dowdy Ferry Road, and then we've got Dr. Heckle and Mr. Jive. There you go. And this one had the hit, It's Sad to Belong. It was a big one from this one. And this one had the song, Love is the Answer. I do like their version of that song. You almost forget Love is the Answer is a Todd Rundgren song, but I do like their version of that one. So a couple of very soft rock favorites. There you go. Okay, we've got Donovan's Slow Down World. I kind of always try to pick up any Donovan albums I see because there's a lot of them that are absolutely terrific. This is a later Donovan album. Didn't really connect with this one. I found this one a little disappointing on Epic Records. Just nothing too special from this one, Donovan. And this one came out in 1976. But there's some great Donovan albums for sure. And you can usually pick them up pretty inexpensively. Okay, always got a special spot from the Mamas and Papas. And this is Mama Cass. And this is Mama's big ones. There you go. Mama Cass, her greatest hits. Dream a Little Dream of Me, which was kind of a Mamas and Papas song, but also seems to be associated with Cass Elliot. Make Your Own Kind of Music. She didn't have a lot of big hits on her own, but just what a terrific voice. Yeah, Mama Cass there. Okay, we've got the band Gamma, and this is featuring, of course, Ronnie Montrose, the band Montrose, and this is kind of the offshoot of this, and this is the third album, I believe, and this is it's a numbered copy. It's not a promo copy, but it seems to be like a numbered copy up there, which is kind of interesting, but great rockin' stuff here. Yeah, if you come across any Gamma, pick it up. Well worth checking out. Okay, here's a very odd soundtrack. I have not seen the movie, but this one still has the hype sticker on here. The movie Soul Man. And then you've got Soul Man featuring Sam Moore and Lou Reed. Not sure what I thought of that, but you've also got Sly Stone featured on here. Also Brenda Russell. It reeks of 80s production. This came out in about 1986. Very odd. You got New Shoes featured on here. Also, Tom Scott, as mentioned, Brenda Russell. This is an odd soundtrack. You probably should find this pretty cheaply if interested in 80 soundtracks. Very unique to have Sam Moore and Lou Reed doing Soul Man. I don't think it quite works. Yeah, so it is what it is, and on A&M Records. But still kind of cool to have the hype sticker on that one. Okay, we've got Four Tops Live, and speaking, again, when you have these albums that aren't necessarily all that well recorded, but they're recorded in small clubs, and there's just that atmosphere that kind of takes you back to a different time. So this is the Four Tops Live, recorded at the upper deck of the Rooster Tail in Detroit, Michigan, of course, on Tamla Motown. And this would be a Canadian issue on a phono disc, but Motown Live, and of course, featuring the hits. Just love that cover there. Okay, we've got Graham Parker, a great artist. I always enjoy his stuff. Graham Parker and the Rumor with Heat Treatment. Great artist, and that's on Vertigo. And we've got Turtles, Golden Hits. I didn't have this one. This is some old ones and some fairly new ones they have on the back here. Of course, you've got Happy Together. You pretty much got what you need when you got It Ain't Me, Babe, She'd Rather Be With Me. There's a few of these Turtles greatest hits available, but kind of a nice one there. We got Ohio Players, and this simply is the album called Tenderness. I generally quite enjoy the Ohio Players, not this album so much. This one came out in 1981, so that's kind of slightly past the Ohio Players in their prime from the 70s. And they do Try a Little Tenderness, And they also cover Sitting on the Dock of the Bay. Some of it works. It starts to feel a little disco-y. It's okay, but not great. Much better is something like this, of course, Ohio Players, and the album Pleasure. This gets more into that real great Ohio Players sound. Going on there. Okay, this is an album I really knew nothing about. Of course, the great artist Bill Bruford, great drummer with Yes and King Crimson, and this is called the Bruford Tapes. I think these are basically a radio broadcast with the lineup that he's got on this one. So the fidelity is not great, to be fair, but it is overall it's a great album in terms of just a great playing and a good listen. Maybe not the best of fidelity. It is it's a major label release, and I like this on here. Suggest a retail price of $5.98. That's right on the album there. But yeah, happy to come across that one. Okay, we've got, I never thought I'd come across this one. I've seen this shown so many times on the VC, and this is the album Janis from the movie soundtrack. I've never seen the film, and of course, as they say, especially with Columbia reissues, this album contains previously released material. They always make a point of saying that on Columbia compilations, but most of the stuff on side one is, you know, all the great hits that you're looking for. Some of them are, you know, recorded live, but then the second album is Janis Joplin Early Performances, and it's featuring Janis Joplin on a number of, you know, sort of early demos, that sort of thing. Maybe I should take the shrink off so you can take the like that. And then one of the albums was slightly warped, but it's warped just enough that it still plays okay. But it was kind of like when I put it on, I went, oh my goodness, it's just one of those you can never quite tell sometimes until you put it on the turntable. But yeah, I've seen this shown many times. Overall, really a nice album. So really happy to add that one to the collection, especially with some of those early Janis Joplin sort of demos and things like that I'd never heard before. Okay, how about the album Stealers Wheel? Of course, features Jerry Rafferty, and Jerry Rafferty would go on to a solo career, but of course the big hit on this one is Stuck in the Middle with You. That still gets, I think, a fair bit of radio play to this day. So happy to pick that one up. That is quite the cover there. Almost looking like Robert Fripp there from King Crimson in the middle, but Stealers Wheel there. Okay, and we've got Peter Schilling and Error in the System. Really glad I picked this album up. Remember the 80s hit Major Tom Coming Home. Overall, nice record. I think it's just really got a nice 80s sound in a good way. 1983, but Peter Schilling and Error in the System. Good album. Happy to pick that one up. Okay, we've got Seals and Crofts, A Year of Sunday. Don't know if they had any big hits on this one. I don't think so. Again, very much in the England and John Ford Coley and that very sort of easy listening, or not easy listening, but easy rock sound of the 70s. But Seals and Crofts there. Wasn't familiar with that album. Okay, and also we have got the Byrds on Tidal. I think Mazzy had shown this one just recently in one of his features. This really is a great album. It's got side 1 and side 2 is in concert with a side, full-length side featuring 8 Miles High. And then side 3 is newer stuff at the time, certainly with this late configuration of the band. But this really is a terrific album, produced by Terry Melcher. Might have done maybe a little bit better if they had just released it as a studio album and maybe not concerned with the live stuff, because the live stuff feels, in this case, even though it wasn't that long ago or sort of recorded at that time, the songs, when you're doing Mr. Tambourine Man and So You Want to Be a Rock and Roll Star, don't quite match what the band was into at this time when they were going down very sort of country rock sort of thing. So it does enjoyable to listen to, but you notice the contrast between the live and then the studio. But well worth picking up if you're a Byrds fan. Untitled double album, really terrific. Okay, and we've got Lucifer's Friend. How about this? This is a German, predominantly heavy band. By this time, they weren't quite as heavy rock sounding, and this is kind of a tribute to rock and roll, sort of in their way. So this is Lucifer's Friend. I'm just a rock and roll singer. So there you go. And there you go on the back. But a band, you know, again, I'm not completely familiar with, but did enjoy this album, but maybe it's not necessarily indicative of their sound. Okay, and we're going to wrap things up with a terrific album from the Temptations. This is All Directions. I think this album has been reissued, or I'm not sure if it got reissued on one of the record store days, but of course, a terrific album that features Papa Was a Rolling Stone. I mean, doesn't get any better than that. And then last but not least, if you were to look at this cover, just briefly, I wouldn't have guessed that this is a Black Oak, Arkansas album. And for whatever reason, I seem to be coming across Black Oak, Arkansas albums, and of course, they're fairly cheap. And here is another one on Atco. This is If an Angel Came to See You, Would You Make Her Feel at Home? There's always that whole tongue-in-cheek sort of thing going on with Black Oak, Arkansas, but I wouldn't have guessed that. It's not typical album cover for this band. And that is it for this time. Thank you so much. Again, if you have any comments on any one of these albums that bring back any memories or anything like that, please do jot that down in the comments. Do enjoy reading them. Thank you so much, and we'll chat again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.